My program's been connecting with Farming Smarter for quite a few years, largely when it comes to cropping systems and integrated management systems around, usually with a focus on cereals and a lot on winter wheat. I probably dedicate half my program to winter wheat and the other half to spring cereals and oil seeds and pulses. So one of the things that we're challenged by when it comes to winter wheat is stand establishment. And so, and then the other issue we have with some newer alternative cereals like say triticale is also you have issues with crop insurance. And crop insurance is something that's also affected winter wheat growers as well. And that is, you know, if you don't get it in by a certain date, you're at risk to not being able to insure those acres. And how's that for a deterrent? You know, you're already trying to convince a spring wheat grower to switch, and there's all these reasons he's thinking of in his head about, you know, trying to work around that interface between harvesting and then worrying about planting, and then now he or she has issues with cropping insurance as well. So what we wanted to do, we knew from some of our other work, especially in southern Alberta, that some of the arbitrary dates for cutoffs for crop insurance dates for winter wheat in the fall are as arbitrary as one side of the Bow River is going to be this date and the other side of the Bow River will be this other date. And so we knew that we could plant well into October in southern Alberta and not have issues. And so we thought, well, now's the time to look at a planting date study to see what that range, what that window looks like, not just in southern Alberta, but Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, because obviously from Ag Canada's perspective and from our stakeholders, we're not just interested in Alberta. We tend to have a prairie-wide focus and a network of sites. So the study behind you has two factors in it using Flourish winter wheat. We wanted to focus on Flourish because that was one of the latest releases by Rob Graff's program out of Lethbridge, and him and I go way back, and we've been collaborating, him on the breeding side and me on the agronomy side with winter wheat. And so we kind of wanted to see how Flourish was going to do across a range of environments, and this seemed like a pretty good fit. So basically we wanted to get on the extreme of either side. So our earliest seed date is actually August 15th, going all the way into November. One thing that I was interested in, and I asked Dr. Yvonne Lawley from the University of Manitoba to lead this study, so she's leading this. She has a master's student involved in it. And I also asked her to put together a second factor with a seed treatment. We've already published some studies using seed treatments and their benefits, and particularly with neonics, although that, you know, sometimes is a bad word, but the fact is seed treatments, whether it's some of the fungicide chemistries or our neonic chemistries, can have very important positive effects, particularly on winter wheat and winter cereals, and not just for what they're designed for on the biotic side or the disease side, insect side. It's actually that abiotic stress tolerance that we're seeing nice results with seed treatments, and why we recommend them actually. You can get better plant stands with winter wheat going with a seed treatment, and that relates to both chemistries like tebuconazole, the fungicide, as well as the neonic. You just get better stress tolerance and a more vigorous crop, and that leads to all sorts of positive benefits throughout the growth cycle of that crop. So in this particular example, we don't have a neonic in it, but we have two chemistries in Raxil Pro. That's prothioconazole and tebuconazole. And prothioconazole was the one we wanted to look at because we were actually using it in the fall as a foliar in our winter wheat to see what a fall foliar application of that would do relative then to the regular regime of going out in the spring and applying it. And the reason for it was, one of them was that it was a separate chemistry from the others we were looking at with our seed treatments, but we were also interested, the pathologists were interested in that whole timing aspect. And it actually worked out pretty cool because we did see benefits to applying our foliar in the fall, and some of that definitely related to not just defending that plant against disease, but again, it was actually doing something to that plant that was not wholly understood, but definitely in Europe, the idea there, the concept and the hypothesis in the works is that it actually provides some frost tolerance. So that would be something really possibly of benefit to us with winter wheat here, where we obviously have greater winter kill stress than Europe does. So anyway, that's Raxel Pro coupled with various seeding dates of the variety Flourish. Now what you can see behind us is we actually have a train wreck. And the train wreck, without too much investigation, would tell me we've got issues with the green bridge and we have wheat streak mosaic virus in these plots, which in talking to Rob, apparently it's quite an issue in Montana as well. And so we had a bit of a flare-up last year in Ken's plots in Lethbridge, and we've got it here. I can see it's in some of the stuff that got mowed down, and it's trying to get into some of the other plots as well. But it's a good, it's a good talking point because it really stresses the need, the importance of when you're going to winter cereals, particularly if you're switching or if you've got multiple cereal phases surrounding that field, you need to be very sure that you've terminated all green matter, because that green bridge is the bridge that the little mites use to cross from that crop, whether it's a late sprouting volunteer from that spring cereal crop you had, and then it just jumps into the winter wheat once it's up. And it's not a surprise. Our earliest dates are on this side, and over there are our later dates, and the earlier ones obviously got whacked harder, and that makes sense, right? The ones that got in early, got up faster, were the first ones the mites would have jumped onto. And so green bridge is a big thing. Another thing that this reminds us all about is that variety selection is key. So if you think you might have a problem, if you're, you know, that field there may have been in cereals. So if you're thinking, you know, given the goofy year we had, dry, then wet, that's dynamite for volunteers, and that's a good opportunity for a green bridge that you might not be able to manage. So variety is important. Radiant is actually resistant to the wheat curl mite that's the vector for that disease. So Radiant's a good choice in that regard, and you'll be able to see it, and Rob can talk about it more over there. And a newer one with Elevate is also got it. You're putting your hand up. What do you want over there?
Well, I just wanted to make a point because it's a good time.
Yeah.
In that if you're going to grow Radiant or something with that wheat curl mite resistance, don't think that you can forget about controlling that green bridge.
Yeah.
Because if you do that, the resistance will break down, similar to what's been said with midge resistance, for instance. But you know, in the United States, where they've actually deployed several of these wheat curl mite resistance genes, in the matter of a few years, because farmers abuse the system, the resistance goes down and they're back to square one.
Yeah, and it really speaks to the point, especially from the agronomist perspective, where we want to layer our levels of defense, and that's all about a holistic and an integrative system, right? So we're going to layer our defenses by, you know, an optimum seed date with a seed treatment at the proper depth. We want to go with a nice high seeding rate of at least 450 seeds per meter squared, or 45 seeds per square foot. If we think we've got an issue, that variety selection is probably key. We want to eliminate that green bridge, and you know, going into stubble is obviously a benefit, but on the stubble side, it's a little bit deceiving to some growers as well about what you don't need to go into canola. We've published studies now where winter wheat going into pea stubble provides similar yields at the end of the cycle when you're harvesting that crop as canola stubble. So it's not a prerequisite to have canola stubble. In fact, in some areas it's becoming quite challenging with the later maturing canola varieties that we have, which is why you're getting your yield bump primarily with your newer hybrid canolas. It's not some fantastic innovation as far as I'm concerned. It's just later maturing varieties. You have greater growing degree day requirements. You're going to probably have higher yield as a result. And And so sequencing with canola is an issue, but with stubbles like peas, even lentils, in some areas where that's a fit, it actually works pretty good. Southern Alberta, actually, barley silage stubble is also providing comparable yields to those two systems as well. But going into barley grain stubble is a disaster. We showed that results, and that wasn't far from here. It wasn't Farming Smarter, but it was another applied research association into barley grain stubble with their winter wheat trials, and it quite clearly demonstrated why we had the results that we did in our study.
I'm going to throw a little wrench into Brian's talk here. You know, this is a dryland site. We talked about the moisture conditions last year.
Yeah.
Pretty piss poor, and we honestly didn't get rain here. When was it, Laverne? Not till the May long weekend, right?
I think we got about 1 inch and 3/10 from about the beginning of April till near the end of July.
From last year.
Yeah.
But then this year it didn't really rain much. It was pretty darn dry until the May long weekend.
Yeah, we had 1.5 inches. We had a 9/10 snow, whatever date that snow we had, and it was a little more widespread. But prior to that, I think we had 3/10 and 3/10, and then the 9/10 snow.
So in all honesty, these winter wheat plots have been put to pretty ultimate test, and even that there's plots, I'm pretty amazed that there's anything here. And the wheat streak side of it, I'm still questioning that. I think that the stuff we took to Rob last year, there was no mites. But the early seeded ones just looked really, really bad. And I'm not sure if it was a frost stress or what, but.
Well, last year we did have some funny abiotic issues going on in the spring that may have partially explained why we were having that issue in Lethbridge. I would bet pretty heavily we've got wheat streak here, though, from what I'm seeing here.
Yeah.
Just the way it's starting to spread too.
And then Laverne was hoping that we could take a walk, as he's got winter wheat right here, and he's got a bit of an issue down at the edge of his field, and that I guess could be a wheat streak issue down there as well.
Either that or some sort of chemical.
Well, that's a good point, because yeah, you kind of got to watch, like if you're planning on sequencing winter wheat, say behind a lentil, where you're using some sort of a chemistry like an Odyssey, and we're really dry like we were last year. Okay, so we're already in low organic matter. Now we're putting a chemistry down that's incompatible with winter wheat, so it's got to get metabolized by the soil microbes, but it's too dry and there aren't enough there to break it down, and so it will just sit there. And when you do go in, that can be an issue. So you got to kind of be thinking about and basing decisions on levels of precip, the chemistries you're using, and you may have to adapt to what you've experienced for precipitation going into the fall. But I've only, I've been doing this now on the research side for 16 years, and there was one year, I think 2003, where we had an issue where a farmer in Nobleford lost a quarter of winter wheat because he cropped in behind peas on a dry year.
Well, this was peas. Majority was down, so that's a season-long control.
Yeah, so you could be explaining right there what may at least partially cause some issues for sure. So we'll keep carrying down, because Jamie, I think, is going to talk on the fall rise side of things. But it's interesting, even with the plots knocked back, like take a look at the first block, which is the control and has no seed treatment, and then the second block has the Raxel Pro in it. And you can tell me if you think Raxel Pro did anything. Raxel Pro is a little bit more hit and miss. When you package, say, Raxel WW that has the neonic as well as the fungicidal chemistries, I think we're seeing that more consistently positively affect and prevent those plants from going into a stress event. We're kind of hit and miss, I think, a little bit more with the Raxel Pro, but I know Dr. Lawley there had a site last year that had night and day differences between the two that may be partially explainable or fully explainable with the frost tolerance that may have come from the prothioconazole. but we'll just walk that way. And I know October, November is looking a lot better than September 1st and 20th, but trust me, don't wait until November to plant your winter wheat if possible.